Great. Good afternoon, everyone. When my colleague Tim invited me to come and speak, he told me it would be an intimate audience. I think I've been hanging out with too many Americans for too long not to realize when someone's pulling your leg. But in the next 20 minutes or so, what I'd like to do is really give you some of the highlights of a survey that we do in North America, where we ask our clients and industry experts, what surprised them the most? What are the things that you didn't see coming? And we ask them this because the things that surprise people are the things that they then focus on in the years ahead, and possibly with an eye to making some money out of it for the opportunities. But the first thing I want to do is maybe just clear something up. I know that we're down under, and that when you cross the international date line and you go from north to south, things get mixed up. But from a consumer perspective, this is just wrong. Yeah? So with the powers of PowerPoint, I just want to switch this around and remind you for the next 20 minutes or so that it's the consumer that is really driving change in the industry. It's really a fork to farm story, a chopsticks to farm story, a hand, whatever your chosen utensil is. That's not to say that markets aren't important, but once the consumer gets behind something, then all hell breaks loose along the food chain. In the US, the consumer accounts for something like 2/3 of all of GDP. In Australia, it's around 60%. And it has profound implications all the way along the supply chain, all the way back to the farmer. We've all been driven nuts by the gluten-free trend, right? But this has gone from being some cookie fad to a long-term trend that's resulted in a 10% decline in per capita wheat consumption in the US. It's also kicked open the door to a whole variety of pulses and grains that we didn't even know existed and are now regular staples for a lot of people. The changing consumer attitude towards fats has also led to a resurgence in demand for things like cheese and butter, which are at 50-year highs. The American love of pizza also has something to do with this. And similarly with bacon, right? We used to try and make pigs as lean as possible, but now because we have a different view on fat, we're increasingly demanding more and more bacon. A couple of guys a few years ago tried to set up a dating app for bacon lovers, right? Did anyone find love on the baking app? No? This guy here says, yeah, he found love. Ultimately, it failed, but that's one of the problems of startups. Anyway, back to the survey. So one of the main things that we see, and time and time again from our readers really, is the pace of change. People are literally walking around with their mouths on the floor at the incredible pace of change that we're seeing in the industry, and we get quotes like this. And it's not just about people changing their preference of ice cream from vanilla to strawberry. It's happening across the whole supply chain. Consumers are looking to eat healthier options, driven especially by the younger generations. We had to worry about millennials, and now we have to worry about Generation Z. Anyone under 23 in the room? Anyone? No? Okay, one here. That's what they look like. There's a person at the back over there. They're driving everyone nuts. And similarly, at retail, a huge explosion of activity going on. Walking around the supermarket to a lot of people is now redundant. It's all about direct to the consumer and getting it to the consumer as fast as possible. And then the rise of small companies that we're seeing out in the hallways here. A lot going on. And when we dig into the trends around food, these are some of the ones that we're seeing. And they're not new, but how we interpret them is what changes. We're on a never-ending search for convenience. We're humans. We're lazy. We like things to be easy. You know, what once was convenient, like having breakfast cereal at the table and pouring milk, is no longer convenient for our as time-pressed, on-the-go people. Similarly, how we choose to define health and wellness has changed. No one can say the word dieting anymore. Weight Watchers in the US has banned the word dieting. It's all about better for you. It's all about looking for fresh products, minimally processed and natural. And similarly, snacking. No one has time to eat anymore. We're all so busy on the go. It's all about snacking occasions and on the move. I could spend a whole day talking to you about the trust issues in food. But increasingly, consumers are looking for companies and brands that share their values. We have a joke that some of the mission statements of some of these small brands put the major world's religions to shame in their ambition to change the world. Similarly, also food. Food is medicine. It sounds daft that we don't think of this all the time. I don't know if anyone's tried the 7-day gummy bear cleanse. I hear it takes 10 years off your life, in a good way, that is. But this whole intersection between food and health is becoming increasingly important. B. Wilson, writing in the Wall Street Journal only the other week, kind of puts this out. It's out at the fringe right now, but increasingly, this idea of food and medicine is gaining traction amongst the consumers. Another theme about greater food, really, is the rise of competition, where some of those big, old, stale brands are really losing out to the smaller, brighter, more nimble companies, eating their market share time after time. Companies like these, which I won't go through all the time, but these are kind of new packaged foods that represent cleaner labels, they have fewer ingredients, they're avoiding wheat, they have less sugar. Your pizza base is going to be made from cauliflower in the future. It's not going to be made from wheat. And the bottom left-hand one is Soylent. This is the meal replacement for those of you who think having a kitchen is a waste of space. Another area is this whole idea of edible upcycling, where we're taking waste streams that are previously not being used and turning them into food products. We're turning, breweries use a lot of grains. It's been converted into snack bars. And similarly in the UK, a company called Toast Ale, where we waste half the bread that we produce, is being brewed into beer. So like the sentence says, none of us should be wasted like bread. And all this has been accelerated by social media. We've heard a lot about Facebook and privacy issues, but it doesn't seem to stop us wanting to hang out on social media. Americans are now spending 2 hours a day. And as any brand marketing expert will tell you, you have to follow where your consumer is. You have to shop where they shop. And so brands are coming online into this space. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in Australia with double-digit growth in e-commerce and even in the online food sales, such as HelloFresh. Instagram now has 1 billion users. Last week they launched Checkout, where you can click on that image you like and you can end up purchasing it. This is going to be a huge opportunity for food companies, where food is one of the big hashtags on this platform. Food, 328 million. Food porn, we're humans, what can I say? 192 million. Pizza, the largest one, 38 million of all the foods. And just to put this in perspective, and my colleagues at Rabo are going to get upset with me again, Rabobank, a mere 33,500. Anyway, I've just lost my job again for highlighting the deficiencies. But wait, it's worse. Look at this. Guys, come on. Right? There's going to be a lot of great food here tonight. Hashtag Aussie food, okay? We can do this. We can be better than Rabobank on Instagram. Okay. Another area is this idea of Flexitarian, the future of where we start looking for less meat on our plate. It's a horrible term. I actually prefer the term like vegivore or something like that. But increasingly, we're looking for plant-based solutions. At the start of January 2018, some guys in the US put up this chart of all the players that were working in this space. This is what it looks like as of Monday, right? This is the explosion of interest that's going on in this space right now, where everyone is looking for different alternatives. And it's not just this isn't really a vegetarian or a vegan story, it's that flexitarian story, about 10% of the market right now. It's still relatively small, and these are American terms, so everything sounds large to you guys, right? Sales of just 4 to 5 billion, but the whole protein or meat market is around 200 billion in the US. And increasingly, we're hearing from our readership that they don't believe that this is a fad. It's something that's going to last forever. But in part because the quality has improved of these burgers, and it's not just those god-awful tofu burgers that we tried when we were at college. But it's not for everyone. There is a lot of pushback to this. There are some states in the US that are legislating that you can't call plant-based meats meat, or you can't call them milk, because apparently it deceives the consumer. I'm a bit skeptical about this. I mean, I don't think it'll come as a surprise if I tell you there's no butter in peanut butter, right? There's no ham in hamburgers. And man's best friend isn't the main ingredient in a hot dog. So maybe not. As an example of this, we had a bit of a crisis in Brooklyn last year when we ran out of oat milk. This is one of the more trendy versions of the alternative plant-based milks. And cartons that were selling for $5 were trading for about $200 on Amazon. And this shortage created a flood of new entrants, of new farms that are setting up, also established players such as Danone with their Silk and Fereday with their Quaker Oats. But super interesting, it was the dairy companies too that were getting involved, right? They saw the opportunity around this, and they started to view their oat pastures in a different light, something to feed people rather than feed their cattle with. Another area which has kind of surprised a lot of people is really the ongoing troubles of big food corporations. It's a Chinese curse, I think, to live in interesting times. Certainly, it's playing like that for a lot of companies. You can always rely on the French to deliver the truth in a very blunt manner. This is Emmanuel Faber, the CEO of Danone. Actually, big brands are just failing. I mean, if he says it, who are we to argue with that? I mean, the bottom line is, after many years of changing tastes of the consumer, a lot of these large companies are still really struggling to adjust. And there's been a huge turnover of CEOs. A very dangerous job to be right now is to run a food company in the US. You're likely to be scalped as Wall Street come after you for not delivering on the quarter. The latest example of that was Kraft Heinz, which you may have read about last month, where, a whole litany of woes. Heinz is 150 years young this year. They were going to celebrate that, right? They're not even going to survive the year if this carries on for much longer. And their whole approach of where they were cutting costs has now seemed to have backfired majorly. And then when you look at what they think is innovation, then it probably comes as no surprise, right? As my daughter said when I showed her this slide, "Dad, don't you know they can do that at home?" Right? And similarly, even after all the bad news, they're kind of, they've come out with two more beauties in a similar line: barbecue and mayo, mayo Q, and mustard and mayonnaise, right? You can't make this up, right? You can't make this up. And you can always rely on Twitter to have the perfect explanation for what's going on, right? Mayo should, right? Okay. But it's not just Kraft Heinz. When you look at these large companies as a group, they spend very, very little on research and development, just 1%. They're much more interested in spending their money trying to persuade you to buy the products than come out with new and innovative products that talk to today's consumer. And and I know I'm comparing apples and pears here, but if you compare it to the tech industry where they spend double digit on in innovation, it makes you think, 5 years of investing like that, what would some of these food companies look like? What would the future of food look like if they put some serious money behind what's going on? But as it is, right now, these companies are looking beyond food for their growth. They're looking for growth in other areas. And more than one are exiting through the pet food aisle, where they're attracted by the $32 billion pet food industry in the United States that is growing at 8 to 10% a year. And each one of them now is thinking, well, let's have a division in pet food, right? This is the future of food, ladies and gentlemen, for a lot of American companies right now. It could have been worse. Back in the day, back in 1979, Sara Lee, which is an older brand, had this existential crisis about the future of food that it decided to invest and buy an underwear company, right? So I'm showing you this slide because this is a really bad idea. Okay, I don't want any of you to go back to your management and say, Rabobank thinks we need to invest in underwear. That is not why I'm saying any of this. But it does tell you some of the crazy situations that food companies have got themselves into in the past. So the final area I want to just quickly zip through is really this really interesting relationship that food has with technology, where we kind of love it and we kind of also hate it for a number of different reasons. Some of the trends I've been talking to are really, a lot of things that the hippies got right, yeah? A lot of the things that we're seeing right now, our love of natural and organic, the things that are growing really well, the hippies were there, so we should give them credit for that, right? And so when it comes to technology, this is what it looks like for a lot of people in the food industry right now, right? If I came to you and said, look, I've got this great idea for a business. We're going to get rid of our iPads, we're going to get rid of our iPhones, and get back to using typewriters, you guys would think I'm nuts, right? But in food, in certain parts of the food industry, this makes perfect sense. They want simpler products, simpler ingredients. But it's not that in agriculture that we don't like technology. We love it in other parts of the food chain. These are some interesting companies that we're seeing through our Food Bites platform. We're having artificial intelligence around milk quality. We've got virtual fencing. We've got this really cool company that came on one of the platforms in London that zaps weeds with electricity. I can't wait to try that out myself. And similarly, we don't mind technology when it embraces our food, when it tells us about sell-by dates and when our milk's going to go out, or give us a new take on a vending machine like Farmer's Fridge that sells fresh salads in fridges at airports, or mechanical arms that kind of scoop out ice cream or make your salads for you. But one of the things that came out, and this is really kind of my last point of the survey, was that there seems to be some warming of technology or warming towards technology in our food, a growing appreciation of food tech. And we see that in lots of different examples. Probably the most prominent one is the use of plant-based heme, which gives that kind of blood taste and look to the Impossible Burger, which is really taking the US by storm. It's in over 6,000 outlets. It was awarded lots of reviews for the quality of its taste. And you can kind of follow the money here because as in other areas of the ag sector, food tech is now attracting serious money. Possible Foods got something like $120 million in funding last year. Beyond Meat got $50 million, and so on and so on. So people are being drawn in, recognizing that technology and the consumer is kind of warming up to this because they begin to perceive the benefits to them. Similarly, there's a company called Mycotechnology that works on mushrooms and tries to mask the off-taste of things, leading to sugar reduction. So all this is happening right now. I feel I've run out of time, so I will end it there. And thank you very much.